Hi, Life Group leaders. This is a really exciting week for our church. You'll be getting this just before our first two service Sunday, and so that's going to be the main thing dominating all of our minds at the moment. Certainly this week, a lot of you are going to be all hands on deck on Connectors teams and helping out with kids' church and stuff, so we're really looking forward to that. Not only is it two services, we also have baptisms and baby dedications, and more importantly, I suppose, for this video, we're starting our new teaching series, Does God Hate Mondays? Just so you understand what we're trying to accomplish with this series, it should be pretty practical and fun, and so we're really wanting it to be quite attractional to make it easy for you and your group members to invite people to church. It's going to look at all the stuff that we hate about the other 6 days of the week, why work can sometimes be hard, why family can sometimes be hard, and relationships can sometimes be hard, and how sometimes we get this idea that we've got to cling on to Sundays where we can be really holy and have a little bit of peace on our sort of Sabbath, but the rest of the time we've just got to white knuckle it. And so what we want to try and do is debunk a few myths, bring some real practical stuff out of the Bible that can help people practically and change sort of the lens that we look at our work week through. Because God has a huge amount to say about the work week, and it's all actually for His glory, and so we can really dig into how to do it well. So over the next little while, now that grows behind us, we're not going to be sending you quite as much stuff that you have to do during the week with your group. This is an opportunity for you to get involved in things like Playdate this Saturday and some of the other We Are Durban things that are coming up. This is also a really good time for you to do some good community building stuff. So if you haven't yet done your braai or your hangout time, make an effort to get together on a Saturday afternoon or something with your life group and really punt it hard to do some of that community building stuff that we know you want to do. Also, Haley's mailed you guys all the different roles, and particularly the admin role within your group. You can start to think about getting your 2ICs ready and doing some of that practical stuff so that you get to lead with a little bit more freedom over the next few weeks until the term ends. However, I do just want to give you a few tips on what's going to happen in Life Group this week, because we start off with a kind of argument that actually work is not a bad thing, it's really a blessing. We get to work, we don't have to work, that God designed work, that it was a good thing. And we'll go right back into Genesis and show that in the first place, God defines and describes Himself as a worker, gives Adam a job to do before the fall. So work can be a really good thing, but we've messed it up. And so as we go on, we're going to start talking about, on the evening, what people hate about their work, but actually what they might miss if they didn't have work. And that second question is going to be quite an important one. If you had no work, what would you start to miss? And be sensitive to the fact that there may be some people in your group who are struggling and not having work or thinking that they may be without work shortly. And so be sensitive to the fact that there'll be people in there who really hate work, and there are people there who already know that they're longing for work. But the thing that you're trying to do with that second question is move people to understand that, in fact, something in us is not just satisfied, but actually gets to sing when I'm able to do something valuable and meaningful that I'm proud of. That's how our Father in heaven works, and that's how He's designed us to work. So you want to shift your group from just griping about what they hate about their work to starting to see that maybe, although it's messed up, and although this world's not ideal, there is still something inherently wonderful about being able to do work that we can be proud of. We're then going to move the conversation from that into what can potentially be quite a controversial topic, and that is the idea of authority and submission. Because right there in Colossians 3, Paul wades into this stuff about parents and children, husbands and wives, masters and servants, or bosses and employees for our context. And seems to be pretty comfortable saying that God is for authority and submission. We've distorted it, we've messed it up, we've got power hungry and cruel with it in our sinful world, but that inherently authority and submission are good things, and that's going to be an interesting conversation. What I'd like you to try and do is to steer it away from the marriage topic. We'll get to that in proper detail later in the year. So try and get guys to park that to one side and to look at it more in the work context. It's a little less emotionally fraught when we deal with it in that context. And then I want you to have gone and read Colossians 3 really carefully and go in armed with the fact that the Holy Spirit is happy to be called a helper. That even within the Trinity, Jesus, though He's fully God, is perfectly happy to submit to the Father and will for all eternity do that. But the Holy Spirit is totally happy to submit to giving glory to Jesus and the Father, that even within the Trinity, where there's total equality and goodness, authority and submission still takes place. And it was Jesus choosing to submit to the authority of the Father that even made the cross possible when he said, Father, not your will, but my will be done. So there can be an amazingly beautiful version of authority and submission that doesn't make one less valuable than the other, but actually keeps both equally valuable, and yet there are different roles that are at work there. And so if we've got this idea that authority and submission can actually be good, even though we see them so often in terrible light, that can start the conversation for how, at work, my awful authority figure, my horrible boss, can nevertheless still be worth submitting to for the glory of God. And how my lazy, irritating employee who never submits correctly to me is still worth serving and leading in a wonderful way for the glory of God. And if we can start to shift people to thinking that during their work week and in their relationships where authority and submission has been messed up by the world, we as Christians can start to model it right, that God will get a whole lot of glory, and that people will start to ask some real questions about why it is that you work that way or why it is that you lead that way. And we get to give some really cool answers about the God that we serve. So if your evening has gone well, you should get to the point where people have firstly started to admit that maybe work is not such a bad thing, that in fact it could be a blessing. And secondly, started to get quite honest about how they might treat their boss or treat their employees based on the fact that ultimately we all are under the authority of Christ, and that I get to work in this authority submission space as a Christian in a totally different way from the way the rest of the world does. And if people are walking out with some big, scary, bold ideas about how they might represent God in their workplace, you've done a really good job. So enjoy the conversation, and more than that, enjoy the next few weeks as you've got a bit more freedom to lead your life group as you want to. Do that communal thing, get your life group roles ready, set up your 2ICs to lead loads in future so that if multiplication or planting out needs to happen, that can all happen. Because with 2 services, it's all grow for us for the next little while. Cool. Enjoy your evening.